just realizing this will be my first time actually getting to see you in the flesh. Actually need reminding for who else who serves on board these days.
Hi, Gina here.
I can look for raise it.
Yeah, where it should be. It's just a. I think that was intentional.
Yeah, I don't think they're all the same. I don't think they wanted you to be able to raise it.
Can everyone hear us?
Yes.
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 Great, thanks, Bobby. Let me get up. Okay, so I think we're ready to go whenever you are, Jim.
Okay.
Possible to bring up the Zoom screen? Just, I was gonna write down the LAS.
I can track that.
Okay, I'd like to call the ADA Compliance Committee meeting of January 17th to order. And I'd like to start with the roll call of the meeting.
Okay, so just a moment here. I had it up. Acting Chair Whaley, Caroline Scott,
Present.
just a minute. I don't think the sound's coming through over here.
Were you saying that to me specifically? Can you hear me now?
Jen, Caroline.
Oh, I was asking, can you hear me now? But I can't hear you very well either.
We are still getting Just a moment while we work out these technical difficulties. Why they have to mute it.
What's that?
You have the computer now. Okay, try again, Caroline.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can, but we
I keep on getting a poor connection type sound. It's garbly.
Carolyn, your video is turned on. I'm turning it off to help the situation. Is it off?
it's on. But you are here.
I'm here. Yes.
Okay. Bonnie Calfell,
Present.
okay, Gina Lytle,
Here.
Deborah Lane,
I'm here.
Annalise Rank, she had emailed me and said she would be absent, and Commissioner Reed. She said that she would be either late or absent. So we do have a quorum.
Okay. I would like to entertain a motion to go onto the minutes to approve the May 17th, 2022 minutes.
What do I have to say?
So moved.
So moved.
For a second.
I second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
I.
Aye.
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 Ayes have it. And I would like to approve the July 19th, 2022 minutes. Are there any comments on those minutes? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
And do I have a second?
I. Second.
Gina Lytle seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
I.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. The next order of business in the regular items is the ADA concerns, compliance, and status report. Ellie, do you want to take that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. It has been many months since we last met, but the long and short of it is, since July, we have not received any complaints related to ADA Title II. So that is all I have to share on that front.
That indicates that the city is doing an outstanding job. And the next item order of business is a review of the accessibility survey findings. Ellie?
Yeah, so I don't want to run through this entire list, but if you go to page, I want to say it's 15 of the meeting packet, Kara Snyder, really just to go back to your first slide, was looking for one of the share, time to compile, just that we went through the full project report. You all will do and try everything. But she and they encapsulated in the notes the key takeaways from the survey, some of which were list, these certain items could serve as opportunities for the public, some of which I know that the city has engaged in previously within certain water bills, and they've tried to do some videos for the public to view to have a better understanding about particularly sidewalk enforcement issues and keeping them clear. But if anybody has any questions about what's on the list, I'm happy to address them. We, with Carrie's departure, our division is down to 50% staffing capacity. So I can hand on heart say that we haven't had a chance to sit down with other departments or otherwise just talk through a possible follow-up survey. But I think that's still very much our intention to try and figure out if we can do that and what that should be centered on, like about sidewalk enforcement. But again, with that, I'll take any questions if people have them.
Those summaries, they seemed generic. Nothing jumped out specifically to me as a issue, but certainly encourage continue to work on those. Any questions regarding survey?
Gina here. I have a couple of things that it's really hard to understand what's being said in the room from the mic there. And I guess I'm just curious that we talk about sidewalks and we had a program for snowbusters, but I think if we're going to do accessibility surveys, that it would be nice to have some kind of snow removal opportunity for people to participate in. Because our winters are pretty long here in Montana. And it seems to work really well when, people help each other out and know there's a need.
Thank you, Gina. You actually bring up a really good point that should probably just be mentioned for the record. I believe that others are aware of this already, but the city no longer has a Snowbusters program. I hope that the transportation systems team have been able to take that information down off their website. I think that that was their intention when I last spoke to them about it. But the city, for a brief spell under the previous city manager, had a volunteer coordinator who was helping out with basically corralling all volunteers for things like the Snowbusters program. That position no longer exists, and with that person's departure, we don't have anybody to work with those types of volunteer groups. So that is part of the reason why, or maybe the reason why, that program no longer exists as a service in the community. But I think
I went on classifieds and found that there were volunteers and people that were easily matched and that were involved in the Snowbusters program, and they were really wanting to continue that. So I think if there's a way to make that happen, that the people on both sides are available and ready.
That's great to hear, Gina. Thank you.
Thanks.
So are there resources if the city doesn't have the volunteer coordinator? Are there other entities within the community, perhaps the chamber, perhaps some civic group that would be willing to maybe take on that? Is that something that would be worth looking into if somebody would want to? I mean, Rocky Mountain Development Council or somebody.
Conceivably, I would be loved to volunteer any of my nonprofit friends for that. But potentially there would be an agency out there. And I think so long as the city weren't, the one that had to do the work of managing those volunteer groups, whether it's, Boy Scouts or United Way or Rocky or any other entity.
Okay.
I actually saw on Idaho, they have a social media page where people connect on there. And I was wondering, the city has my Helena app. Wouldn't that be a great place for volunteers to connect with people in need?
Well, and I have seen stuff on the neighborhood website
Oh,
next door. Yeah, where people have said, I need someone to do that, and someone goes, I'll do it. I have seen a few things like that, posts.
You know, this is Caroline with Ability Montana speaking here. And I think since I last spoke with you all, we have changed our name from Montana Independent Living Project to Ability Montana, officially rebranding and all of that. So just introducing under our new name. But I think that we might be interested in helping with that effort too. I can't speak for our program manager for our independent living section, but I think there might be some interest if you guys want to try and combine. I could get back with you and see who the best contact is for that on our side and whoever else is out there.
So Caroline,
In my
yeah, so
past, I was just going to say my past experience with Ability Montana and snow removal is that they advise their employees not to shovel, and that they were, you know, perhaps they would be able to coordinate volunteers and stuff, but they were not really a big proponent or supporter of keeping things clean.
I think, not to speak, because I wasn't part of any of those conversations, and I'm going to guess that we probably wouldn't have capacity to do the physical work. But as far as trying to help coordinate, maybe something that we could help with, just volunteering and organizing in the community to get the resources from one side to touch the other. Like I said, I can't speak on with authority that exactly what that would look like, but I would be more than happy to try and make that connection between somebody on our staff.
Caroline, I think that would be great if you could do that and then you'd get back to Ellie. I think we're really looking at some entity that's willing to be the gatekeeper and pulling those people who are willing to go out and do some shoveling and those people who have the need together and get some identity going. So it's, if you could do that, I would appreciate it.
I will. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I would like to move on to the 2017 ADA transition plan.
Thank you. This is a really quick update. Just to say that one of the things Kara was able to do for us last summer was sit down with the relevant departments to go through this voluminous list of punch list, effectively, of ADA improvements that were found when the transition plan was being drafted, and then in early 2020, when the same team came through to look at the Law and Justice Center and the parking garages to see what needs doing. And this is the sum total of her work that you were provided in the packet. April has been able to get this up on the city's website. So for anybody that wishes to peruse it, it's also available there. This is something that we will continue to do annually and try to encourage, or remind, I should say, relevant departments that as they're working on building their budget for the coming fiscal year, that these be taken into consideration. But the good news is that we are making headway. And I hope that this was helpful for those who are interested in reviewing it.
Yes, and I must admit that I did not go through every line item on that transition plan. But as I did browse through it, I was encouraged to see that a lot of the work has been completed. A lot of it is in progress. Some of it scheduled to be completed in 2023 or 2024. So what I would like to do is when we move forward into reevaluating in 2024 or 2025 is to see, maybe have another column that shows where we're at. Then we can see if there was something that was scheduled to be done in 2023, but in 2024 it's not been done for some reason. So kind of track our progress as we move forward on it. I think would be a good idea.
Sure.
But yeah, that looks like a lot of work, and commend you for all of that.
I can take no credit, but thank you.
Any comments on the transition plan?
I don't, none in chat.
Seeing none, I'd like to move on to item D, update of recommendations of the committee commission for amendments to the city's right-of-way code enforcement authority to allow issuance of tickets.
I'm actually curious to know, April, can you confirm if anybody from Transportation Systems is on the call?
Director Kanapke is
Oh.
on the line, yes.
Dave, do you happen to have an update on this matter? You might not, and that's okay.
Well, Ellie, you were doing such a good job. I thought you were going to do the update.
No, this is your field.
I mean, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that this is still very much under discussion and that the city attorney's office is reviewing it actively. Dave, is that still the
Yeah,
case?
that's really where we're at, trying to figure out what mechanism the code enforcement could use. There's a division between criminal and civil and how that really looks, but we're actively are looking into it. The city attorney's office is trying to find how to be able to, I guess, provide the enforcement to a level that we can, for those that are reluctant to fix any issues, be able to, help them starting with, the education and starting with notices, and then what does that next step look like?
Okay, and David, as we move into enforcement, it's my belief that whenever the city or any government entity gives somebody a fine or a ticket, whether it's a speeding ticket or anything, they have the right to appeal that through the judicial system. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, and that's that's part of the structure of this enforcement mechanism that the attorneys are looking into, so that there is the due process and there is an appeal and such, and there's, I guess, not an attorney, but there's different processes between civil and criminal, and how that looks, and so that's really where the majority of the work is going into now, on how does this look structurally, and then what happens if somebody wants to appeal, or what is the process in each of these steps.
But can I ask for some clarification? This is Gina. It's my understanding that enforcement of parking has to be by a police officer, somebody sworn in that capacity, and that this is coming down from the state legislature, that we're governed by state law. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And that the only way to really change that is to go through the legislature and to have that modified so that we could have a code officer, somebody that writes parking tickets, give out these tickets instead of taking time away from a very valuable person that is responsible for so much more than writing parking tickets. I mean, how can we change that without going to the legislature?
So part of it is looking at viewing it versus civilly versus criminally, and that's what the city attorney's office is looking into. But you're correct. Right now, Gina, as it stands, it's a legislative change. But if it becomes a civil matter, if the cities are allowed to do that, then that potentially could be an avenue that we could go down to. But I haven't got a update on where we stand with their opinion on this.
Well, I know the city attorneys have been working on this for 4 years because I brought this up 4 years ago. And this is how the code enforcement people there in Helena can't enforce it, is because of me, because I brought it up to the attorneys. And, you know, the last meeting we had where the mayor was involved, you know, it was like we were going to change things, that was 4 years ago, but really nothing's changed in 4 years. And if we really want change, because this affects all communities in the state of Montana, not just Helena, that we really need to go to the legislature and have something that's deemed enforceable by our municipalities. And other states have done this. And I believe in the last 2 sessions that I've been present, I've seen, I don't know how many parking bills go through the state legislature that don't come close to addressing this problem. And I'm kind of curious if anybody knows anybody that has anything to do with parking legislation in the state of Montana, why this hasn't been addressed. And I've been spinning my wheels. Sorry, my frustration is coming out. The last 4 years of knowing that police officers are the only ones who can enforce this per our legislature. And if we're going to do something, like we've had 2 sessions and now we're in a 3rd, and I'm thinking, I hope somebody, because I've passed along legislation from the state of Texas that I believe has the most progressive parking in the country for enforcement, and that something the state of Montana should follow, that I've given to the city officials. I've emailed it to, I don't know how many people, I've emailed it to state people, and I'm hoping somebody will get on board. So I don't think this is going to be resolved. Like 4 years, the city attorney has been pondering this and we're still waiting for a response. So that's the steps I think, is that who's ever serious about this, that has more influence and time here, would be willing to move forward. Thanks.
Well, Gina, thanks for that. If you could, if you would, if you still have that Texas info, could you send it or resend it if you sent it to me? And I will get it at least to our city manager, and we can have that discussion and potentially forward that on to the or not MMA, the League of Cities and Towns, and see where we can start moving on this.
I will forward it to you now. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina.
You bet.
So Gina, this is Jim. If what I understand is correct, that this will take a amendment or change to the Montana codes, is that something that Disability Montana has talked to any representative or senator in the state legislature with proposed legislation to change?
I'm not sure. I forward this information to them.
Okay.
As well. Disability rights, I've forwarded to Ability Montana. I've shared this with everybody that I know. I've even shared it to Senator Cafaro, Marianne Dunwell. So I'm trying.
Okay.
Don't we have like full-term meter maids that do the parking? Are they considered officers? Because they write parking tickets.
No, they're not. They can't write the parking tickets as Gina described. A sworn police officer has to write those.
For the accessible spots. You're
Correct.
Oh.
Yes, this
But
isn't
they can
parking
write
in
other
general.
parking
Yes,
tickets. Okay.
yes.
And just within the downtown and within our parking lots and structures.
And one little caveat to that, the rule that Gina's referring to is they can't ticket the car. They have to ticket the driver. So that's where that time component that Gina was referring to comes in, is they would have to wait around for the driver to return to ticket the driver, not the vehicle.
It makes absolutely no sense at all. And especially when we have a My Helena parking app where other states and municipalities use apps just like that for parking violations. And nobody gets hurt like it's done with pictures and license plates, and it can be done anonymously, and it's very effective and it works. And I am hopeful that someday Montana will get on board.
Okay, thank you, Gina. Any other comments on the right-of-way issue? Moving on to the update of the e-bikes on the city trails. Is there somebody from Parks here?
I believe Brad Langsatter was going to join us.
Brad is on the
Yes,
Zoom right
Brett.
now.
Brett is on.
Yes, thank you. There's been no change with regards to e-bike usage. They're still restricted to only those areas within the parks that motor vehicles are allowed to operate, and that would be parking areas. So on the city trails, electric bicycles are classified as motorized, and motorized usage is restricted.
So does that mean that if I go with my e-assist trike, that it's an adaptive device? So do we have language in there that clearly states for adaptive device e-assist is okay?
So the 2011 DOJ ruling for electronic mobility devices addresses that on municipal ownership. So if you do have an electronic device that's your primary source of mobility, then you can operate that on the trails within the park system that device is capable of being operated on.
So my e-assist trike is considered, what was the language you used?
It's considered a primary source of mobility so that you can operate that on the trails that you feel comfortable operating it on.
Okay, and are the parks department, are they going to do any of the trail? There's a movement to grade these trails and to kind of rate them width and level of technique. Is that going to be done in Helena?
So the trails that are maintained to a level to operate mobility devices would be the trails that we're classifying as accessible trails, and throughout the year we try to maintain those trails to a standard where they are conducive to operating mobility devices. We have also natural surface trails that are maintained for other uses and maintained to deal with water drainage and such. But and then within our parks, of course, our paved trails within the parks are maintained to where they are conducive to the operation of mobility devices.
Thank you for that information.
You bet.
So Brad, My understanding of the American with Disabilities Act is that a person with a disability is anybody with a mental or physical condition that limits their ability to participate in one of the entities of living. I'm paraphrasing. And I know I've got some people on the meeting that I've talked to previously about this. And it seems to me that a reasonable accommodation for the city would be to create some rules that would allow people who are not able to participate in the trail system on bikes. We have a lot of young people that are very physically capable of doing that. And we have people who are less physically capable. And it seems like the e-bikes would be a reasonable accommodation to those people that are, I don't think you need to be in a condition where your mobility device is your primary means of transportation, but that if you're not physically able to participate in the trail system, there should be allowances within the rules that allow geriatric people with a variety of ailments that don't allow them to get up there and be biking up some of the trails, that the electronic assist would be a reasonable accommodation.
At this time, that's not addressed. There's a couple of complexities, one of them being that within the open land system, we have federal land that's impregnated within the outer boundaries where we don't have authority to change, what they have for travel restrictions. And we also have a number of open lands parcels that have deed restrictions that do not allow motorized unless it's covered under the 2011 rulings. So in a sense, in some cases, the city's hands are tied. There's other areas where we have more latitude, but at present, the city commission has determined electric bicycles to be motorized.
Okay. Is there any other comment on this issue?
I just think for an aging population, the state of Montana, that our age numbers are really increasing, and the number of caretakers that we have to care for our aging population is dwindling. And I think that if Helena can be a little on the cutting edge of trying to make places that are easy to get to more accessible, and I think that would help, because there seems to be a climate. I know I get a lot of flack that e-bikes need to go someplace else away from Helena. But if you look at other areas, the studies show that e-bikes don't do damage that, people are fearful of, that e-bikes, I don't know, my experience is that once people are more familiar with them and are around them and see them in use, that they're really surprised at how much they enable people to keep in with life and with others and not to, damage our ecosystem. So really, I'm not sure why the city's taken this stance that they're motorized, because studies have shown that I don't know if you have documentation that shows otherwise. I guess I'd be curious on how the city came to this conclusion and what it's based on, what factual evidence, and how they're going to see this going forward. Because I think this is really something that can help our city compete with other cities as a destination and that encourages, you know, nature and outdoors for people of all abilities and all ages, because this doesn't affect just the old and the disabled, but it really affects all of us. And I think if we take a look at universal design and how we make our community livable for everybody, not just disabled, like ADA compliant, but universal design, I think that would really help us in having a more friendly environment that's more inviting and welcoming to people. And I'd like to feel like I would be able to welcome my friends here that have e-assist bikes and mountain bikes to participate in Helena. So I hope to find some answers and to why the city came to that conclusion. Thank you.
Is there any other comment from the public on this issue?
Jim, this is Steve Paul-Hemus. Can I make a comment now?
Go ahead, yes.
I am an e-bike supporter, pedal assist. There are signs around town at some of the trailheads that say no e-bikes or pedal assist except as authorized. I'd like to know who and how can someone be authorized. And then there's some signs on access paths that are part of commuter routes. There's a path between Woodbridge and Rhode Island that now has a sign that says no e-bikes. And that's awkward because if you can't go across there, you have to go all the way down to Broadway to go to downtown. And that's not convenient and it discourages commuting by bicycle. And then it's on the LeGrand Canyon. It's not clear to me whether or not an e-bike could go across LeGrand Canyon from east to west and go down to the Fort Harrison. And then it's not clear to me whether the Centennial Trail is open to e-bikes from Fort Harrison to East Helena, as part of it's designated as Centennial Trail and some sections haven't been designated yet. But those are some questions I have and would hope that somehow they can be addressed as things progress.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Are there any other comments?
I guess I just like to add that I have an e-assist bike and I have to cross North Montana to get to any of the trails. And I'm terrified that I don't feel safe. Like that we have bike routes that are really clearly designated and adhered to. And I would like to see that changed along with the climate of being welcoming anyway.
Okay. I would like to at this time make a motion to recommend to the City Commission that the city adopt rules and that would allow pedal assist bikes or throttled bikes on trails other than those trails where there is a prohibition for motorized bikes, and that they develop rules that would identify or approve people with disabilities for use of the trail system. So that's my proposal. Explanation of it would be that somehow we should identify people who need that accommodation and simply not just open the e-bikes up to everybody who wants, who is physically able, but wants to have the e-bike just to make their life a little easier. And I'm not sure how that would happen, but I would like the city to work on something to that extent.
So I would say, just as a point of order, with something like that, we need to notice it on the agenda that we're
Okay.
going to be bringing forward a recommendation, since this was only an information update from the Parks Department
Okay.
for the time being. But also, I think that, Brad, you might be able to add some context in here. I know that you had mentioned to me in passing that there are continued discussions on this matter moving forward, or changes to signage, et cetera. So I feel like in response to Jim's comment that there might already be things in the works. So please correct me if I'm wrong.
There's nothing in the works at this time.
Okay. All right. So if you did want to bring a recommendation forward, we can do that, similar to former Chair Jim Whaley's recommendation. We'd have to go through that same process.
So we'll put it on the next agenda as a.
Yes, if you could provide in writing kind of what your
Yeah.
thought is for that recommendation.
Okay.
That way we can notice it appropriately.
Okay.
Bring it forward for a vote.
Sounds good.
We get you to sign a letter if it passes.
The next order of business is update on species planting with Rodney Street project.
Yes, this is Doug Smith from the Parks Department, and we have Chris Daly on, who's the city arborist, to address this topic.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hello, this is Chris Daly, city arborist for Helena. Currently, we're planning on alternating bur oaks and Lewis and Clark elm.
The reason I don't want this to go into a discussion of the trees on Rodney that are in the news these days, but my concern is that the city has relatively narrow boulevards, or where they have narrow boulevards. And I believe historically there have been elm in those plantings. And those trees tend to, over time, the roots tend to disturb the sidewalks. And it seems appropriate that the city would have some standards that say, if you've got a 4-foot wide boulevard, here are some trees that we cannot expect that over time that they're going to be disrupting the sidewalks, or some design standards so that we can assure that the long term, for the life of that tree, the sidewalk is going to stay intact. And so I don't know what species are appropriate. I don't know the species that have been planted, whether they have roots that tend to spread and heave sidewalks or not. But that would be something that I think this committee would want to follow up with, is what should we be planting in our boulevards? Because I know we've had a number of comments about city sidewalks that then heave and are not accessible to people with wheelchairs. And so we would like to make sure that we're being forward thinking and not causing problems down the line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so we actually do look at that when we're planting trees. The project area has boulevards that are 8 to 10 feet wide, I believe, through there, which should be enough to facilitate a larger tree like that. And in our arboricultural specifications, there is a section in there that talks about boulevard widths and tree size.
Okay. Any other comment on that item? Move on to the election of officers. Do we have a nomination for chair?
I have not heard of any, but if there's anybody present who wishes to nominate themselves or another member sitting on the board, they're welcome to do so. I see you shaking your head.
I would be willing to be chairman of the board.
I would like to nominate Jim Whaley as chair.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I'm stuck with it. Is there a person that would be interested in being the vice chair?
I would.
Okay, Gina would be interested. Is there anybody else? Seeing none, Gina, you are now the vice chair.
Should we, I'm just trying to think.
Do we?
Should we
do
do a
this
voice vote?
by acclamation?
Yes, thank you.
So we have a slate of officers of Jim being the chair, Gina being the vice chair. Do we need a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 All opposed? Seeing none. It passes. Is there any additional public comment on any other items? We have a proposal for our next agenda or meeting to be March 21st. Same time, same location, including remote. Are there any other interest points that anyone would like to bring up or announcements? I move that we adjourn. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Motion second. We don't have to vote on that, do we?
Nope.
We are adjourned.
Thank you everyone for attending.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.